What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Benny Fit podcast, bringing you everything you need to know about living your best life. And the title of this one might be a little bit of a giveaway. The concept of balance and the very notion of balance is something that I definitely think a lot of people have got wrong. And to be honest, I've probably made this mistake myself in the past. I think when we hear the word balance and when a lot of people talk about balance, they're almost looking at this like magical fairy tale place where everything in life is absolutely perfect. You know, we often hear it referred to in things like work-life balance. You know, I only want to work X amount of time. I want to have all this balance at home. You hear it when people talk about, you know, fitness and getting in shape. I want to be able to eat whatever I want, but I still want to be able to lose the weight. You know, I want to achieve an amazing transformation, but I don't want to give up X, Y, and Z. And I think for a lot of people, that very notion that it is this perfect place where there's no suffering and there's no sacrifice, I think keeps a lot of people stuck. You know, and I look back at various points in my life where I've had to shift balance, and the way that I see balance and the way that I believe everyone should look at balance is a sliding scale. You know, to create balance at different times, different things have to shift. You know, if you think back to, like, I don't know, you think about a seesaw, or you think about, one of those old school sets of weighing scales, depending on how much is on one end will depend on what needs to happen and where it needs to shift to create the balance on the other. And the same goes for things like, you know, if you're at work, for example. I think work's a pretty good example of this. Like, you're at work, and you know, and in an ideal, perfect world where everything's sort of relatively calm and stable, you can put in your 40 hours, you can get what done needs to be done. There are going to be times in your career, in your professional life, where things get a bit mad. You know, I think back to my finance career. Year end was absolutely crazy. January, like, whether I was right the way back in my accounting practice years and it was tax return season, whether once I'd moved into the corporate finance world, year end was December, January was crazy. There are deadlines that you just need to meet in that moment. In that month, you're not going to have much balance in the way that most people view it, because that is going to mean more work needs to be done. You're going to have to put more hours in. I think back to a January, one January year in my sort of latter stages of my finance career. The company, in their infinite wisdom, decided just before year end they would implement new accounting software. So that accounting software had lots and lots of teething problems. It essentially meant that we were having to run the year end on two different pieces of software: the old software, where we had more confidence in what it was doing, and the new software, to see if that software worked and to iron out any of those issues that were arising. In that January, I did not have a single day off work, no weekends, nothing. Every single day of January, I was in the office, or, you know, I'd get home late and I'd log back in. My days in the office were starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. There were days where I wasn't finishing till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. In that moment, a lot of people are going to look at that and think, fuck that. But the work needed to get done. The deadlines needed to get met. And that was what life was. And even in that month, you know, I had to shift my balance, because work became the highest thing that needed to get done. You know, it meant that I couldn't go to the gym 5 days a week. I was having to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do some cardio. I was probably having to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, if that, and those sessions might have been cut a little bit short. But that is what balance is about. It's about this sliding scale. Once that absolutely manic January had died down a bit, February, March were a little bit easier. So I was able to then get back to the gym 5 days a week. I wasn't in the office 80, 100 hours a week. I had my weekends back. But that's where balance, for a lot of people, I think, creates this expectation that they're just never going to have to suffer. And you know, it's the same when it comes to fat loss. I think this notion that seems to get bandied around a lot at the moment of you can eat whatever you like and get in the best shape of your life. Like, you can have this perfect balance in life to achieve amazing things. You can achieve amazing things, but you probably are going to have to shift the balance a little bit, because if you feel like you've got balance in your life at the moment, but you want to push your physique to a place it's never been, you are going to have to shift your balance to focus more on the things that you need to do to push that physique to where it needs to go. So that might mean that you need to go to the gym a little bit longer. It might mean that you need to go a bit more frequently. It might mean that you have to more consciously increase your steps or do a bit of cardio. It probably is going to mean that you're going to have to put a bit more attention and focus into the food that you're eating and managing your calories and macros, because all of those things are important if the goal means enough to you. And that's also the thing that matters too. And again, in that, I'm not saying that if you want to achieve the most amazing transformation ever, that you have to completely sack everything else off. I'm not saying you need to take a 3-month sabbatical from work to focus just on your fitness. I'm not saying that you need to say no to seeing your kids for 3 months because you're focused on fitness. I'm just saying that there needs to be a shift. And the sooner that people come to accept that, and the sooner that people understand this idea that balance is this sliding scale, yes, you might have to push hard for 2, 3, 6 months. Once you've achieved that amazing transformation, once you've lost that weight, once you've got to that point, it's then much easier to maintain that physique. It's much easier to shift that balance back to another direction. But in order to achieve the thing in the first place, the balance is likely going to have had to shift. And as I say, that the sooner that people wrap their heads around that, the sooner that you understand that it's actually okay to do that as well. Again, I think a lot of people would look from the outside in, and they'd almost look down upon you for shifting that balance. I know, again, back when I said that January, I was in every single day of the week. I had my mates messaging me at the weekend, like, you come in here, you're doing this. And I was having to say, no, I'm working. And that you get a bit of stick and you get a bit of teasing for it, but my career was advancing, my career is progressing. Like, this thing at that moment meant a lot to me. So I had to do that. Similarly, when I've pushed myself to get in photo shoot condition, like I'm doing at the moment, I'm going to say no to a lot of things, because getting in that shape for me means a huge amount. It means that I'm not going to be saying yes to every meal out. I'm not going to say yes to every bit of food that gets offered to me. I'm not going to be clearing Louis's plate when he's not eating his dinner. I'm going to be more diligent in weighing and managing all of my calories and macros. I'm going to make sure my steps are getting done regardless of the weather. I am going to make sure I'm nailing those 5 o'clock in the morning gym sessions, because all of these things mean a lot to me. And that goal of getting in photo shoot shape is something that I really want to do. I know that my balance is going to have to shift. And I've also spoken to the people around me to let them know that too, because once everyone's more bought into it, it certainly becomes a huge amount easier. If you're trying to go at this stuff alone, you are going to come across the people who don't get it. They're not bought in. They don't understand what you're doing. And just a simple conversation sometimes can go a long, long way. So the moral of this podcast, if you want there to be one, is understand that balance is a sliding scale. Balance is going to shift depending on what it is that you're working towards in a particular moment. It doesn't mean that it has to shift entirely to one thing to completely sacrifice everything else. But there probably are going to have to be sacrifices made here if the thing that you're working towards demands them and requires them. And like I say, the sooner that you get into that way of thinking, and the sooner that you accept that there are going to be some of those sacrifices, you're going to reach that end goal way, way, way quicker and be much, much more proud of how you've got there. Any questions on anything I have said in here, please do shout as always. At Ben Howard Fitness on all of the socials. ben@benhowardfitness.com is the email address. Any questions that you want me to take care of for future episodes, also give me a shout. And yeah, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their week, an amazing weekend, and I'll be back again next week with another one.